Hello again, Rabbi.
Hello again, Joe.
I really enjoy the musical Fiddler on the Roof. I've seen it performed live, and of course, there's the movie version. My one big regret in life is that I did not get to see Zero Mostel in the part. But there are many parts of the piece that resonate with me. The one that, as a parent now, dealing with all the things that a parent with grown children and all the conflicts that we have to deal with every day, was the scenes where he's talking to himself or with God about his daughters. And he goes, on the one hand, there's this. On the other hand, there's that. On the other hand, there's this. And then on the other hand, there's that. And I go, that's my life. I have all these different perspectives and I have to pick one. And I really resent that. And I don't know if it's God's fault or Zero Mostel's. What's your perspective on the situation?
That's something that we all wrestle with, arm wrestle with, or it plagues humankind. There's a Yiddish joke that predates the Fiddler on the Roof movie and play. And the rabbi is listening to a couple, and the wife says something, and the rabbi says, you're right. And then the husband says, and he goes, you're right. And then they leave, and the rabbi's wife comes in, she said, I just heard the very end. And she says, my dear husband, they both can't be right. And he goes, you're right. And that's exactly what you're describing on the other hand. And that joke keeps coming to mind whenever I put on the television, the radio, read the paper. Well, I don't read the paper. None of us read newspapers, right? But we still dial the phone. I haven't dialed the phone since I was 10. But given, we'll do that for another topic. What keeps coming to mind is that everyone presenting with vaccination, everyone presenting with what's going on in the Middle East, everybody is right. And that's why the joke keeps coming to mind, because the reaction is, well, everyone can't be right. Well, they are, because everyone is presenting a piece of the pizza. And very rarely do we have someone presenting or believing or understanding in the whole pizza. And so even TV stations, everyone picks a piece of the pizza as if that's the whole pizza. It isn't. And that's why everyone can be right, because you're right in that you're focusing on your understanding. Remember in school, one of the nuns or one of your instructors would hold up a coin and say, if I hold it so all you can see, and then I ask you to describe it, you'll describe it as a disc. And you'll describe what's on the face of the disc. Then turning it over and presenting the other side. What do you see? Someone else would say, well, I see a disc with a building on it, not an eagle on it. And then they can argue with what's on the disc. Then the next step is holding it up like this. And you go, wait a minute. It's not a disc at all. It's whatever you describe it. Yet it's the same object. And we need a way to control only looking at our piece as if it's the whole thing, and acknowledging, gee, I'm looking at it this way, you're looking at it this way, and someone else is looking at it this way, which provides another view. It's the same object. So when we talk about vaccination, yes, there are side effects. There are side effects when we had the polio vaccine, to the smallpox vaccine. There are side effects to hypertension medication. Everything. So why do we pick on that as if that's a reason not to take it? We want to do benefits versus burdens. And we want to go, you're right. And then we want to look at what's happening with the infection spreading and why it's spreading. And yes, It's because people aren't vaccinated. But then what about the other pieces? And our TV stations, our country, we even now talk about red and blue. We have now divided ourselves up, and each side only has one piece of pizza, maybe two. And
Well, maybe the problem started with pizza. I'm old enough to remember when you would go with the family to a pizza parlor like Shakey's, which I don't think exists anymore. And some people would want pepperoni and some people would want just vegetables. And what's the point of a vegetable pizza, I ask you?
I
And
agree.
so we'd order two pizzas and we'd have to eat all the two pizzas, or you couldn't take some home in those days, or sometimes maybe you could.
Yeah.
But then somebody came up with the brilliant idea of having half pepperoni, half cheese on the pizza. And maybe that's the problem with society altogether. We now get to have our own slice. We haven't learned that you have to agree on what to put on the pizza.
And I think that's a spillover, and it's really hurting us because people are digging in and taking sides. Families are even split over vaccination, over what is going on. And if we can't deal with this, we're going to have bigger problems, because in the cancer treatments, now the research that allowed us to have the vaccine for COVID, the technology is now being used for drugs to treat more serious diseases, to treat cancers, maybe to do something with diabetes rather than symptomatic treatment, maybe ending it. There's a whole new avenue opened in our research. And if we're having trouble with this, we're going to continue. So this would be a good point to look at each other and saying, you're right. You're right. So let's take a look at the benefit versus the burden. And how do we take all our views, make a whole pizza, look at it and say, what is in our best interest? And not keep coming back to over and over again, this. And my favorite is emergency, I forgot the word for it, for the vaccine. Some people say, I won't take it because it hasn't been approved. It's only emergency approved. That's just a technical term that's used in the release of medication. Doesn't mean it's more dangerous. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. But if you have the slice and you think of an emergency as one thing, you're right. However, that's not how the word emergency is used in drugs when we do the testing, when it's released to the public. So you're not looking at the whole pizza. So let's put our pieces down, or let's hold them up any way we want, so that we acknowledge it's a coin. It's an object. And depending on how I view it, that will determine what I think it is.
Well, you've convinced me, Rabbi, and I'm going from now on to allow them to sprinkle some vegetables on my pepperoni pizza,
Just
just to keep the family and a different perspective and an open mind.
Just keep the vegetables to a minimum, because that just ruins the pizza. Thank you, Joe.